Hey there, everyone. It's Denise Salcedo. Welcome back to the channel. I am very stoked to introduce to you my guest for today because I'm a big fan of this person and his work. Ladies and gentlemen, the bass god, Gringo Loco. What's up, Gringo Loco?
How are you? How are you? It's a pleasure is all mine. Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited to bring you on because, man, I have been watching your work. Obviously, I see your matches all the time. And honestly, dude, you're killing it. You're always everywhere. It's kind of crazy. Some of the stuff that I've seen you do in the ring, like one of your matches, from last year's show from one of America's Most Wanted on GCW in LA was literally one of my favorite matches that I saw the whole entire year. But you're killing it, man.
I really appreciate that. The kind words mean everything. It's been a hell of a ride so far. This wave that I've been on recently has really been something. You're right. I am everywhere. It's really hard to keep up with, but we're doing it. You know, I signed up for this 20 years ago, and I'm living the life that I've always wanted to. So, you saying that you enjoy my matches, that's why I do it.
20 years, man. Isn't it crazy when you start to think back about everything? I'm sure you can't even think of every little thing that you've done. That's 2 decades worth of work traveling all across the world. And you're still just doing more and more. I know you recently made your debut not too long ago at Glate. Been doing that. You're booking, the world on Lucha. It's crazy.
Yeah, if you would have told, the 12-year-old boy watching ECW in his room that he was going to be a professional luchador in Japan, I would have told you, okay, well, that's clearly a lie. But yeah, unbelievable. Stepping into that ring with the Japanese lights coming up on you and you're opening the show, it's really something. It's like, holy, I made it. Like I did it. I'm in Japan. Uh, they were willing to bring me over and put me over in my first match to showcase what I can do without any limits. It really was a milestone for me in my career, absolutely.
Let's talk about that. You know what? Let's start there because you're talking about how this is a milestone in your career. We're talking about Glade. That's a pretty fun promotion from what I've seen. I got to see you there. I got to see Jack Cartwheel there. I thought I was like, oh damn! Like I tuned in to watch a little bit of the show, and all of a sudden I'm seeing all of these faces that I didn't even know were going to be on the show, and I'm like, oh my god! Like this is kind of nuts. So I do want to ask you, given that you've worked in so many different parts of the world, what was the experience like getting to get booked in Japan and going out there and just such a different world from what we live at here from my understanding.
Yeah, it's a dream. It's a completely different planet over there, culture-wise, food-wise. It was just such an honor to be even taken into account and invited by Sima-san himself. Like, I used to watch this guy. He's actually part of my favorite match that I've ever seen in my career, the six man from Ring of Honor that actually took place in Chicago. And just to have him reach out, just basically DMing me on Twitter saying, "Look, man, you're amazing. We'd love to have you." And I was like, in Japan? Or are you doing a show over here in the States? Or what exactly are you talking about? He's like, no, 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 Japan. And here are the dates. Can you do that? I'm just ecstatic. I really couldn't. It's still surreal as I'm talking to you right now. It's just, it happened and it's actually going to happen again, which is unbelievable. Clearly, I made some sort of impression over there that in a positive manner. And I got thrown into a stable of Black Generation International, and I mean the amount of talent that's in that stable right now is incredible. And I must have done something right because the people responded incredibly, and the promoters wanted to bring me back. So it really still is surreal to think that I went to Japan, killed it, and I'm being invited back in the same year.
Hell yeah, man. I'm so excited for you because for those who've seen you wrestled, I'm pretty sure you're surprised, but I feel like for the people that have seen you wrestle, they're not so surprised because they're like, you should be there on these shows and doing all of this stuff. So I do want to ask you, how different is it, or what are the big differences of wrestling in Japan? Like, what's the biggest thing that to you, you're like, oh, like this is different from, Mexico, from America, etc.
Well, right now in Japan, they're still very COVID conscious. They still have restrictions on what the fans can and can't do. Biggest thing was the first show that I did there. It was in Tokyo. A lot of rules, and they were required to wear. Everybody's still required to wear a mask, and they weren't allowed to use their voices to show emotion. So It was just applause, which was definitely different from, say, like a Mexico City or a crazy GCW LA show. But they were clapping. They were clapping hard. They wanted me to hear them, and I did. That was definitely the biggest change. And I mean, I was a super fan of like the actual professional wrestling ring that they used. It was the best ring I've ever been in my life. So those two things definitely come into mind thinking about the changes in Japan.
What was different about the ring?
I don't know. It just seemed like the way a professional wrestling should be. It was just it was an incredible bump. The ropes are just thick. They actually have pieces of tape because you know how like ring ropes are black usually. They have pieces of white tape so that you can see if you're going to dive over the ropes, you can see exactly where each rope is, and my mind was blown. It's like they take every detail into account to make sure that the performer is as safe as possible. And I took that to the heart because I mean, you've seen my matches. I use the ropes a lot, so it made a huge difference.
I would have never thought about it, but it's true because if you got the black ropes and then you're moving so fast in the ring, and sometimes you could have like that blur vision of like you're seeing the fans, all of the lights, and then whatever it is, the background could be like shaded. I never thought about having that little tape to kind of just show you, hey, here's the rope. That's really interesting, actually.
Absolutely, yeah. It was very. It caught me off guard. I was like, "Hey, you guys forgot to take the tape off," and they were like, "Oh, no, no," and they explained to me why the reasoning behind that was, and I was blown away. I was like, they really do have every detail covered in Japan, and not just as a country, just in wrestling and just in everything. Like they do everything how it's supposed to be done.
When are you going back?
We so this is actually kind of funny. I'm trying to find time for Japan. I'm
Because it's a lot of traveling. It changes your
Well, no,
life.
it's not that. It's just I'm booked the dates that they're sending me, and we just got booked for Belgium, Joey Janela's European vacation, and
Nice.
I just booked that last week, and he, Sema just hit me up and was like, "Can you do this date? It's the same exact date that I'm going." So he's like, "All right, we'll circle around and we'll get you another date." So I want to say for July, but we'll just have to wait and see.
Nice, man. You're being booked everywhere. So let's talk about that because when I first it's funny because I was trying to think back. I'm like, when's the first time I saw Gringo Loco? So you and I actually worked a couple shows together back in 2018. We were both on the Ara Lucha shows. I was doing the ring
Oh.
announcing for those shows. And I didn't even realize, I don't know, for some reason, like it didn't like click until like recently where I was like, oh shit, it was actually Ara Lucha where he and I first started to like, when I first started to see you. And then after that, I saw all of your work in GCW, but I do want to talk about kind of like when I first kind of started discovering you and seeing your work. I remember one of my friends was telling me like, oh yeah, like, he's like big and, obviously he's all over the world. He works with all of these luchadors. And I was like, oh shit, like this is really cool. So my whole thing was, it felt very random in the sense that you don't really meet guys like you that really
No.
embrace the lucha libre culture, go to Mexico, work with all of these, stars, and actually know and respect, respect that part of it. So I want to ask you, starting off there, how did your love of lucha libre begin?
Yeah, it goes back to the very, very beginning. So I started watching WWF Superstars on Saturday mornings with the red, white, and blue ropes, and I fell in love with wrestling as a sport, as the entertainment. The over-the-top characters. Started watching it, and we started doing the professional wrestling like finisher moves at a gymnastics place on the tumbling blue floor, and we would do that for I don't know 2 maybe 3 years. We actually got kind of good at it, and lo and behold, they have like an open gym when we would go, and they would have a class, and somebody in that class on one of these days came up to us and was like an actual professional wrestler, and he was like, "You guys have to do what you're doing here and in our gym." And we went the next day or whatever it was, and we walked in, and it was Lucha Libre gym in Chicago. Very discreet, very under the radar. If you didn't know someone, you weren't going to the show. It was kind of crazy, and that's where I got my start. I walked in, I saw all the posters on the wall of like these incredible luchadors with their mask and their perfect poses during their dives, and I really that was the first time I got into the ring, and from that day till as I'm talking to you now, I've never looked back. I was like, this is definitely something that I want to do. I don't know how it's going to happen, but I was watching the training go down, and these guys were they were making everything look completely flawless, fluid, and like it was easy. And I remember saying, you know, I was a child, 15 or 16, I want to someday get to that point and surpass it, and then I want the world to know how cool this sport is. So that's really what I've dedicated my entire career to, is making everything that I do with my opponent or myself to make it look as fluid as possible. So that, I mean, I fell in love with it, and I was lucha before I was ever American wrestling. Um, and I didn't initially feel accepted. We could get into that, but I didn't. American wrestling was kind of different back in the day, and I didn't feel accepted. But I've always felt at home in a lucha libre environment.
So let's talk about that. Like, why do you feel like you weren't accepted? Like, what was going down, and when did you finally realize that, like, you started to be, accepted?
I don't think that lucha back then was accepted. They knew that I was training lucha libre, and it was just hard to kind of get in with those guys, get in with the cliques. I was seen as an outsider because of the style of wrestling I was doing, and I mean, to their credit, like I didn't have anybody to do the lucha with except for the luchadors, but they weren't trying to get into the American scene. So I was on the outside for a long time. I did a couple tours to Mexico there and back, Mexico City, came back, and then it started to slowly get accepted. And then my whole career has kind of bled into the next chapter. I worked for AAW here in Chicago with Danny Daniels. I did one shot. It was a lot of pressure on me at the time. We knocked it out of the park, and then I'll never forget it. We came to the back, and he was like, "Here's the dates for the rest of the year." And my mind was like, "I'm in. Like I did it. You know, this is like a huge milestone at this point as well." I was very young in my career, but for him to say, "Here's the dates for the rest of the year," I was just so excited.
That's really cool. What was it like going to those early tours in Mexico when you're still not yet accepted? And, like you mentioned, kind of those barriers that you were kind of going through. What was the difference in terms of going then to those early trips in Mexico and then now when you're going to
Oh,
Mexico? Obviously, totally different.
yeah, completely. Totally. My first time that I went, so they used to run these really big lucha libre shows here in Chicago at the Congress Theater with like these super names like Wagner, Parka, Demon, you know, anybody you can think of. So I was performing in front of like 2 or 3 thousand people at 17 years old and meeting all these people. And I was playing a heel. I was throwing tortillas at the crowd. I caught the attention of one of the mega stars of CMLL at the time, whose name is Tarzan Boy. And this story is pretty crazy. I'll take you through it. He hands me a piece of paper with a lot of phone numbers on it. He's like, "Please call me," because I was telling him I want to go to Mexico someday. He's like, "When you get there, please call me." He didn't really speak any English. So I held on to that piece of paper for a long time until I decided, graduated high school. I said, you know what? Worked out like a crazy madman. I'm going to Mexico. Finally get to Mexico. I get all the way down there. I don't speak a lick of Spanish at this point. And I just stay at the hotel that he had maybe mentioned, and it's kind of close to Arena, Mexico. And I called the number once, called the number twice, and there's no answer. And I said, oh my God, I'm in a foreign country. This guy isn't answering. It was probably a fake number. I don't even know how to dial all these numbers, so I was probably dialing it wrong. And I don't leave my hotel room for 3 full days because I am terrified that I'm going to get kidnapped and or whatever the else they do to foreigners that I thought back then, right? I stayed in my room for 3 days. I got room service for 3 days, and I took the phone number down to the front desk, and I had them call, and he finally answers. So I'm 17 years old. He finally answers. He comes to pick me up. We start to train in Arena, Mexico with the top guys. Now, you got to understand at this time, I didn't know who anybody was, but now looking back, it was the class that everybody's trying to be in with Ultimo Guerrero, Virus, Mystico, everybody that you can imagine. And I'm rolling around with them at 17, which is just unheard of now. And I'll never forget, like one of those classes, we went down into the ring in the middle of Arena Mexico, man, and I was like, "This is where I'm trying to be." And I hadn't seen a show yet. Let me just get into this real quick. The first Lucha Libre official show that I've seen. Do you know what it was?
No, what was it?
Yeah, you're gonna understand my addiction to Lucha Libre. It was a completely sold out Arena Mexico, mask versus mask, Mystico versus Black Warrior.
Oh, wow.
And I had
Damn.
like a VIP seat from Tarzan Boy, and I'm like, this is it. Like, I don't need to do anything else after this point. I don't want to work a desk job. I don't want to do anything else. This is what I'm made to do. And I just got goosebumps thinking about it because, you know, he's a friend of mine now. And it's just incredible the trajectory that, this path that I've taken. And I want to go back to you. I wanted to bring it all back to your question. Going back to my start and going into the locker rooms and not knowing the language, obviously very nervous, uneasy, trying to be accepted, to now I go into these locker rooms and I'm completely accepted, respected, and people are eager to work with me. So it's just a complete 180 for sure.
You did it, man. And like,
Yeah.
obviously being I'm Mexican, and I know that, obviously I wasn't born in Mexico, but I know like the culture, it's sometimes like when you see somebody that wants to be part of you and you're like, you can't be part of us,
Yeah.
like we're our own thing. So when you have like that respect from any group of people that you're trying to get into and you get that respect, it is really it's phenomenal. And that's the thing, like I've seen you work with so many of these different guys. God, I can't even think of all of them, but I've seen you work with so many of these different guys. And I have noticed this, like I've always noticed the respect when I see you guys, talking and all of that. I always see that respect. So I do want to ask you, because you're talking about, this time period when you were in Mexico. And one of the things that I've mentioned is that you've really embraced the culture. So for you, how long did it take you to like learn the language? What was some of what were some of the experiences you had? Maybe some crazy stories from Mexico, any of that?
Yeah, I mean, of course, Mexico City is full of
Yeah.
stories with or without me, but yeah, I mean, on and off. I stayed down there for 2 years without coming back, but on and off, it was about 4 or 5 years total of me just back and forth. I mean, literally, what I did was, again, you need money to survive, right? So I would make money. I would go down there for as long as the money would last. I don't have any more money, so I have to come back. I have to work, make money, and just go back. And I did that for as long as I could until came back, made a large amount of money, and then stayed down there for 2 years. And I just made it, or tried to make it work. I knocked on every door until one opened, and that was Arena no Calpan. And they let me use my name because everybody was trying to change my name. They wanted to call me Chicago Fire. They wanted me, just some generic name. And I'm like, listen, man, I believe that I'm somebody gave me the name Gringo Loco. I think I should run with that. And Arena no Calpan gave me the chance to work with that name. I kind of ran with that. They gave me a trio. We became champions there. That whole run is super special to me because it really showed me the different aspects and angles of Lucha Libre as a whole. Like it's not all high flying. You can get gritty and you can get bloody down there, and you can create these wars that people get fully emotionally invested into. And this chapter is super special because of that. I mean, obviously, I went back to basing and high flying after that, but I do have that wild side, which people saw with the Psycho Clown match in Dallas. That I do have like a crazier side every now and then that wants to come out. But um, yeah, honestly, it's just like I said, everything is bled from one chapter to the next, and now we're just everywhere. And I think my experiences from all those years before have prepared me for the life that I'm living today.
Exactly. All of the work, all of the preparation, all of the training. Like you said, you're 17 and they're like mixing it in with some of the very, very best of all time. And here's the thing, too, like in Mexico, obviously, wrestling here in America is not part of the culture the way that it is in Mexico. So it's like two totally different ways of seeing it. And even the way that the way that the people treat it, I know like from my experience, with, family members here, they're always like, oh yeah, like we don't like the American stuff, like that's the fake stuff, this and that. And they're like, on Mexico, it's legit, this and that. Like that's the outlook of people and how they see the difference between Mexican and American wrestling. So with that being said, you have a very, very hardcore, passionate fan base. So what have your interactions been like with the fan, especially when you're coming in as Gringo Loco and doing all of these things, throwing tortillas, things like that? What's the interactions like?
Oh, you're going in trying to create nuclear heat, and if you're coming out with tortillas, it's going to work every time. I can cut a mean promo in Spanish too. Over the years, I just learned, multiple sayings on like how to really get under people's skin in Mexico. And when you cause a riot, as long as it's a safe riot and not getting a glass bottle thrown at your head, it's the best feeling in the world. As long as you come out uninjured, because you try to pull that in some of these cities like Juarez, you might not get out alive because those are the most passionate fans I think I've ever worked for. And that was recently in my run with AAA. Sam caused a riot that I thought he wasn't going to be able to survive, and I was actually afraid for him for a minute. But and interactions with the fans, obviously, when you're in the ring, they hate you. But as soon as you leave the locker room and try to get to your Uber or whatever. It's just fulfilling because they want an autograph, they want a picture, they want anything to do with you. So you can't really beat a Mexican fan in Lucha Libre in Mexico. It's some of the best fans in the world.
So for you, what would you say is some of like the things that have stood out to you the most from being down in Mexico, whether it's a crazy moment, the proudest moment, the most what the hell is this really my life moment, anything like that where you kind of thought, God, like I can't believe this happened.
I mean, honestly, like I never thought that I would get a championship in Mexico City, and that happened with the trios champions. Like I battled for a lot of years, knocked on a lot of doors, and some of them didn't ever open. Later in life they did, but I was down there, I was ready, I was hungry, I was 20 something years old, and to be given a championship and saying, look at these guys, they're the best that we have. That was definitely a proud moment for sure.
That's so cool. That's so cool. Okay, so I do want to get into GCW because that's where, I feel like I got most to know you and whatnot. And so, GCW has been like freaking crazy in the sense that, like, my favorite thing about GCW is the different types of matches that you see that you would not expect to see really anyplace else. And on top of that, what I primarily love is how we're seeing a lot of different lucha stars be brought in for the GCW shows. To me, like it's so fun to see them, get brought in and get mixed in with, the top, indie American promotion in GCW. So that for me is really cool. I do want to ask you because obviously, you're working all the GCW shows, you're traveling across the world, etc. What has the experience been like for you since you joined GCW, watching the company grow, traveling all over the world, and really just the impact that they have had in pro wrestling?
Yeah, I think GCW is just incredible. And I almost missed that boat because rest in peace to Marcus Crane. He had mentioned something about spring break coming to New Orleans, and then I had to do the show. Brett Lauderdale found me. I was doing shows for AIW in Cleveland, and I was just doing that in Chicago dates. Just trying to make a name, trying to break out somehow. Then I met Brett Lauderdale, and he's like, "I need you on my show, man, New Orleans." And at that time, there wasn't really too many talks of like flights and stuff. So I told Marcus Crane, I was like, I'm not driving to New Orleans, bro. He's like, listen, man, you have to do this. This could be the breakout. And I was, put on an unannounced scramble, spring break 2018. And I think we knocked it out of the park because since then, everything has happened with GCW and everything else. So being on this ride with GCW has been the most fun time in my career. The locker room was like a family. We're seeing each other, if not every week, every other week. We're traveling together. We're staying at the same hotels. We're eating together. They really do become your family. Definitely some of my favorite matches of my career are happening currently in GCW. And I don't really know how to describe it other than just fun. I mean, the crowds are getting crazier, the crowds are getting bigger. I'm just happy that I got in when I did because it wasn't always a given that I was going to be full time with GCW. I always wanted to be, but I had to go out there and bust my ass every single date that he would give me so that I could get to this point where it was, all right, here are the dates. Let me know which ones you can do. It's a really good feeling when a promoter tells you that.
Yeah, that's incredible, man. Like that's so cool. Now I mentioned it earlier, but my favorite match that I had to bring up that was recent was on the America's Most Wanted show. It was you, Latigo and Toxin against Ares, ASF, and Commander, and a six man on the GCW America's Most Wanted at the Ukrainian Cultural
Hmm.
Center. We need to talk about that match because I was sitting there and I was just thinking, oh my God, it's one of those things where you like wish every single wrestling fan in the world was watching because it was so good. You just wanted to talk about it with like your friends and everybody was losing their minds with it. The reaction that you guys got. How did that feel? What was it like, just being able to go out and put a match like that? And even afterwards, like you and I had like a quick little exchange. You were doing your thing in the back and I was already getting ready to leave. And you were like, how was that? I was like, dude, oh my, like, I had no words for you. And then the next day on my show, I was just like, guys, I just saw like the best match ever, blah, 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 but talk to us about that.
So yeah, so when I was a child, I had that exact experience watching ECW's first pay per view, Very Legal, and it was Dick Togo, whoever it was. It was just a lucha match that kind of blew my mind, and I wanted to tell everybody in school the next day what I had seen. So I think subconsciously I want to create that feeling that was created in my life early on to all the fans nowadays. We are going out there. We're trying to change the game. This group that I'm moving around in GCW is handpicked by me and Brett, and we're trying to just really show the best of what this sport has to offer in the current moment of today. And putting the matches together, it's like, what's the craziest thing we can do? So we'll start out with the smallest idea, and it just grows and grows and grows, and it comes. You see it, like, it's just Commander. He's out of his mind. Ares is this unique luchador that has this weird style, but it's awesome. My unique skill set with being a bigger guy that can do all these crazy moonsaults and basing and everything. And then the Vipers, who just work together for years and they have all this offense together. It's just, you're trying to find these amazing, perfect pairings. And when you do, and the crowd is electric like it was that night in LA, you have pure magic and you have lightning in a bottle. And it doesn't happen all the time, but when it does, that feeling after the match and you're looking out in the crowd and they don't want us to leave and they're not sitting down, it's pure euphoria. There's no other way to describe it.
It was perfect, man. Like the whole time I just kept thinking, like, what else can they even possibly do? I've seen it all already. It was great stuff, man. Like that was one of those matches that, like you mentioned, lightning in a bottle, you captured it and you definitely felt it. Everybody did there too. All right. So I do want to ask you before we get into the world on Lucha, because I do want to take some time with that, but I do want to ask you because GCW, I think, is a great place not only to see, the guys that you're normally seeing on GCW, but also, you get some special attractions, but also you get a lot of young up and comers, rising stars. I want to ask you, who are some of the guys that you're like really proud of the way that how they've grown, and just some of the guys that you feel we should kind of be on the lookout for.
I mean, Commander, we knew right away bringing him in, he was going to start with us, and like, look at how far he's gone. It's been under a year that he's been working with us, and look at the impact that he's had on GCW, on his own career. He came with us. He worked. It was the Melrose Ballroom. It's going to come up on 1 year, and he's getting called to GLEAT. He's in Germany right now. Such a young, incredible talent. We're just trying to find the best. I mean, Jack Cartwheel, another incredible talent. We're going to be utilizing him on the show as well. And he was on the show last year with Morrison. He knocked it out of the park. He's another young, hungry lion. And I saw how hungry he was because we did the GLEAT tour together. And, I saw him at training. Then I saw him during his match. And he's not going to be with us long. He's going to be signed in no time. The good ones don't last. They come in, they're a flash. It's amazing. And then they're gone. And then they're on to bigger pastures. But, there's so many other talents that I have to get to bring into GCW. I just can't wait to debut them and let you see. Well, I let you see and the entire world to see like what they have to offer. They're coming down the line. The Vipers, we're clearly ready to debut, but there's other ones that are just about ready to debut, and you guys are gonna love them.
It's really cool to see that, see them start and then just like continue to go on, get better. And the next thing you know, come on, we just saw Commander in AEW. Same thing for Jack Cartwheel. He just had that match with Takeshita on AEW as well. So you are seeing these guys just go out there and do all these crazy things. So let's get into the world on Lucha. So WrestleMania weekend, obviously GCW, the collective, there's going to be tons and tons of shows. You're running one of them, booking one of them, and that's the World on Lucha, April 1st, 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, airing on Fight TV. And some of the matches, I won't go through them because I want you to go through them so that you can give a better explanation of, who we're seeing, what matches are going to be going down, and all of that good stuff.
Yeah, so we have a crazy match for you. It is Laredo Kid, who is just coming back from injury, versus El Hijo de Vikingo. And I don't know if you've seen these guys work together. They are maniacs. And I think that if you are in the building for UCC in LA, you're going to be seeing something very special with those two. We have the Luchadoras match, Dulce Tormenta versus Sexy Star. If you know anything about those two, they're two of the hardest working luchadoras that there is right now. And I think they're hard hitting. And I know they're crazy. You might see a table or two. You might not. I don't know. And then my match just got announced incredibly. The rematch is going to happen from The crazy bloody match that we've had in Dallas. It's Psycho Clown versus Gringo Loco. Um, I think you know what to expect during that one. We got Macizos versus Tijuana. You know, I can imagine there's going to be bloodshed there. All four of those guys are just crazy maniacs when it comes to hardcore stuff. We're really trying to give you, just a nice jumble of authentic lucha. I've had a couple of ideas passed to me, and it wasn't exactly, super authentic lucha, so I said no to them. But I just want to I just want to bring lucha, put it on a big stage, um, properly, if that's the word. I just want it to be shown as, look, this is the best of this. We got some hardcore here, flying, luchadores. I just want to have a nice group and a decent show, and just show the world, like, look, man, this genre of wrestling is what I've dedicated my entire life to, and here's the best of it currently.
I agree, man. I agree. And like also, I also wanted to bring up that you're gonna have Negro Casas
Oh, Negro
up
Casas,
against
of
Tony
course.
Deppen. When I saw that, I was like, oh damn, like this is good, So it's like you have a nice card, here, and I know these are just the matches that have been announced, so far. I also do want to ask you because you kind of brought something up right now where you said that you wanted to present lucha, the right way, the best way, and that's been one of my things that like I've never felt, and I want to get your insight on this because I feel like you just, obviously will bring better insight on this, but I feel that there has not been like any major American wrestling promotion, you're on television that have really presented Lucha Libre at its finest. And I feel like that's one of the things that I always wish that some of these companies would really capitalize on. And like when it comes to American wrestling promotions, I feel like GCW is the only one that I've seen actually, really do something in terms of showing the luchadors and what they can do. But I've always thought about them. Like I feel like no, huge American promotion on television has actually shown this. So for you, what are your thoughts on that and what can be done?
Yeah, I mean, shout out to Brett Lauderdale. I think you hit the nail right on the head. The market is untapped, and there's so many talents out there just dying for the opportunity to show what they have, and they have more than enough to give, especially on the American scene. And shout out to Brett because he, trusts my word. I obviously have been in a long time, so I know exactly what he's looking for, what I'm looking for. And I think that this probably is just the start. And I think other promotions are kind of sort of already following the train because I've seen a lot of other promotions booking the same types of matches that we're putting together, which is fine. More work, the merrier for the guys, right? But everybody will always know that GCW went down as the pioneers of booking these crazy six mans that, went incredibly well, or the pairing, like you said, with Negro Casas and Deppen, like the clash of styles that's going to be, but it's obviously going to be awesome. Everybody will always remember, the first people to do it, and it was GCW.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. Like I've thought about this too because I remember like we were really for a while we were only really seeing the Lucha Brothers. They were really the only ones that were kind of getting all of these bookings and they took the world by storm. You started to see, Bandito and Flamita, and then afterwards, Hijo de Vikingo. Now he's kind of the person that people are finally starting to discover and see things. So my whole thing is always like they're out there. It's just a matter like I feel like it takes like that one place to really show them and be like, ta-da, like here's what's going down. And the next thing you know, you start to see these guys, in more places. So it's always kind of crazy to me where I'm like, they're out there. It's just a matter of like bringing them in and doing this stuff.
Well, it's a matter of getting them on the right platform. That's why AEW and WWE are so important. GCW is important. It's just huge rungs to the ladder. I mean, to obvious success. I mean, I think that once given the opportunity, a lot of these guys, as you can see, Commander is just like skyrocketing. You've seen all the articles about AEW and WWE, being interested, and that was because he had the platform to perform with us, which then got the attention of AEW, and not a dark. He got AEW Dynamite, which is incredible, in a ladder match in a marquee spot, and then from that, now he has all the attention. So it's just, it really, I mean, in life and in lucha, man, it's all about opportunity.
That's incredible, man. I can't wait. I also want to ask you, because you're booking, the World on Lucha and all of that. I want to ask you, what your experience has been like, as a booker, and just, some of your favorite things, some of the challenges. Because as fans, we're always like, oh yeah, we could book this, we could book our own show, but really, we probably can't. But so, what is some of the insight on that? Challenges, favorite parts, all of that.
It's definitely anxious and exciting. Anxiety always sets in because you want it to be good. I have nightmares of just running a really bad show, and thank God last year was fantastic. Got nothing but great reviews afterwards, and people still talk about it. That they say that it was their favorite show of the weekend, and I really take that to the heart because I put a lot of energy into it last year, meticulously putting the card together, and the same thing with this year. I mean, I just want it to be special. Um, and you run into a lot of mental roadblocks because there's only so many spots. You figure whatever the number is, and you want to get all these people on, and they're going to knock it out of the park. But if you don't have a spot for them, then it's maybe next show. I think that's the most difficult part for me so far while running a show because not everybody can get on, and everybody definitely deserves the chance. So like I said, I'm just trying to bring the best card possible. I'm trying to bring memories for the fans so that they'll want to come back, and then this could be like an ongoing thing for the world on Lucha. But so far, so good. I mean, last year went really well, and I think that people are loving the idea of a Lucha Libre promotion in GCW.
I agree. I love the idea so much. And it's also like one of the best cities to do it in Los Angeles. So I'm like, yeah, it's always like perfect, right? All falls in line very nicely. All right. So Gringo Loco, before we wrap things up, I do have a couple of questions for you. I wanted to ask you about your favorite dishes in Mexico. I wanted to ask you that earlier, but I forgot. I'm like, wait, there's one. I wanted to know what your favorite dishes are in Mexico, some of your favorite, candies in Mexico. I would love to know that.
Yeah, I mean, you can't go wrong with a good steak taco, right? I mean, pastor
Nice.
tacos, whatever. I add cheese to everything, so that's gonna have, cheesy tacos. But I'm a really big fan of like enchiladas. Do you like what do they call that? The torta ahogada. You know what that is?
It's funny. Usually the ones I have are just like the generic tortas. Like just I usually my go-to is beans, queso fresco, some
Mm,
avocado and cheese. So
yes.
I have like or carnitas, I'll add carnitas to it. I have the very generic torta.
Yeah, yeah. So they primarily sell these in Guadalajara, and it's just like a very unique torta, and it's like I think it's like a pulled pork or something. But I used to eat those all the time when I was trying to survive in Mexico my first couple of years there. So definitely a fan of that. And then candies, I don't really have a sweet tooth. I know they have like a million options down there for that, but I never really got into it. The farthest I've ever gone in life is like maybe a Twix bar here and there. I've never really been
Oh,
into it. Yeah, even as a child, Halloween was never
probably
my thing.
better.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. But I bring them back for family and friends all the time though. They love it.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. I know every time someone that I know is going to, I mean, you could kind of already get everything here, but then there's like those
Yeah.
random ones that you can't really find anywhere. And you actually would, it's better to get them in Mexico. So yeah. But also my last question to you is future goals and all of that, things you want to work on. I know you mentioned you do a lot of stuff in the city, in Chicago where you live and you have a lot of responsibilities. What are some of your goals, things that you're working on?
I get this question a lot, and I think the place where I'm at now, I want to just kind of let it see where it takes me. I've set goals here and there, but like I said, everything has kind of really bled into the next chapter organically. I've never really reached out other than knocking on some doors in Mexico. Everything is just been earned and worked hard for. I definitely enjoyed Japan a lot. I wouldn't mind going back and forth there a bunch of times and working with the best talent over there. Um, and I just think that just keep riding this wave that I'm on and just putting on banger matches. I mean, every time that somebody asks me this question, it's the same answer. I just want to continue working with the best lucha talent that exists. I'm finding out that I really enjoy doing seminars. I did 3 of them in GLEAT in Japan to show them authentic lucha and have their minds blown. That was a super awesome feeling that I wasn't expecting going over there. Yeah, just showing, fans, showing wrestlers authentic lucha libre, and keep, cranking out banger lucha libre matches everywhere that they'll book me. So I'm pretty simple. I mean, you set a goal, that's a good thing, but I'd rather just see organically where it takes me.
That's so awesome. All right, Gringo Loco. Well, I want to thank you so much for chatting with me here today, and talking some good stuff about Mexico and lucha and the show that's coming up. Any last things you want to go ahead and promote? Where people can support you and stuff like that.
Yeah, so what do we got? We got the Twitter handle at Gringo Loco OG, and then the Instagram is I am base god underscores in between the letters and the words and stuff. So that's pretty much it. Please come out. Please support the world on Lucha. Brett and I see the numbers, and if it's a success, we'll continue to do it, and we'll be able to show off all these talents every chance that we get. So I appreciate you having me. The pleasure's all mine.
Of course, of course. I appreciate what you're doing, what Brett's doing, and I have a phenomenal time every time I go to GCW. So I'm always just, I'm so thankful to be here, sort of deal. Thank you so much for coming on, guys. If you enjoyed this interview, please let me know in the comment section below. All of the links where you guys can follow Gringo Loco are going to be in the description box below, and the information on how you guys can watch the World on Lucha and any of the other GCW collective shows will also be in the description box below. But until next time, I'm Denise Salcedo. This is Gringo Loco. We'll see you guys later.